NFL free agency has essentially concluded, and a lot of huge moves have occurred that have just impacted the league in a variety of ways. Much more changes happened than I predicted, and I really didn't have the greatest of predictions looking back on it, but whatever. This offseason was insane. Now today I'm going to be reviewing every single NFL team's offseason thus far. So every notable signing, cut, and trade will be discussed in some form throughout this video. Now to clarify, I am going to be considering what each team had to work with going into the offseason. So let's say a team that didn't have much cap space didn't sign a top tier free agent. I'm not going to knock them for it because they physically could not do it without getting rid of key pieces. So before I get to each team, I'm quickly going to elaborate on my grading scale. The A range means I essentially loved everything that the team did. The B range means I liked mostly everything, though there might be some duds in there, but overall I liked it. The C range, it means that it was fine, not good, not bad, just pretty meh. It should be like no-brainer moves that are in there also. This is an average grade. It's not bad, it's not good. It just means they were okay. The D range means I disliked everything, and there might be some good in there, but overall it was not a good sign from me. And getting an F means that I just hated everything. That's pretty explainable. Hopefully that clears up any confusion you may have with the grades that I give out. I'm not the type to just hand out A pluses and Fs like crazy. I'm going to critique everything in some way. So I hope you understand what I'm getting at, but with all that being said, let's just get right into these grades because this is going to be a long video. So sit back, relax, get some popcorn, get a snack, whatever works for you. Just enjoy what I have to say. We have the Atlanta Falcons, and for the most part, I like what they did, but it's hard to explain my feelings on this. So they brought in Dante Fowler, and like I said in my predictions video, I said that I thought he would either go to Atlanta or the Jets, and it turns out that Atlanta managed to free up enough cap space to sign him, so good on them. They needed an edge guy. They were in on Robert Quinn, and I'm glad they ended up with Fowler because the Bears overpaid Robert Quinn like crazy, and you'll hear what I have to say later. So getting Fowler on a 3-year deal is great. I love that pickup, and that'll help them with their edge need. So in the draft, they can go corner because they need to go defense in the draft. Their defense it's not the prettiest thing right now. They also managed to pick up Todd Gurley, and it was like a 1-year, $5 million deal. There's like no risk in that. I liked it. If he's not the same as he was in 2018, so you're not going to get the same guy, but they better be hoping that they're not going to workhorse him. If they workhorse him, they're asking for failure from him. It's just not going to work. You got to add another guy back there. They don't have anyone back there behind him to really do anything. I think if they ended up going for someone like Cam Akers in the 3rd round or a DeAndre Swift in the 2nd, I think those two guys, if you picked up one of those on day 2, you could really have a nice running back group. And they also ended up trading for Hayden Hurst from the Ravens. They traded a 2nd for him, which I think is a little rich. I don't think Hayden Hurst is that special, but they ended up losing Austin Hooper in free agency. So bringing in Hurst it's not a bad idea. I think he's a solid tight end, but he couldn't get that many reps in Baltimore. And Baltimore runs a ton of multiple tight end sets. I don't know. It's just, I think they paid a little too much for him, but I can see why they did it. So I'm not going to negatively grade the trade, if you get what I'm saying. But I get the move, and I don't dislike it, but I don't love it. They ended up losing Devonta Freeman, who they were overpaying and had injury issues, so makes sense. They lost Austin Hooper, but Austin Hooper kind of got a bit overpaid. So I get it. They lost Desmond Trufant. They cut him, so I guess they could get the cap space to sign Fowler and Gurley because they didn't really have cap going into the offseason. So that makes sense to me. Trufant was pretty good over the past couple of years, but if they feel like they can get someone like a CJ Henderson or a Christian Fulton in the draft to replace him, I would do that too. It just makes sense to me. They also lost Vic Beasley, and I'm not big on Vic Beasley at all, so honestly, let him walk. Makes sense to me. And then Devondre Campbell. And Devondre Campbell's just a guy. He's not developing, but he's not great, but he's not bad. He's got some things to work on, so losing him isn't that big of a deal. You just draft a guy in the mid rounds, and you'll be okay. And there's one thing that's not up here that I said lost, but those new uniforms, they're hideous. I don't like them at all. That's just my 2 cents on them. I think they're disgusting. That's all I want to say on that. I just had to get that little jab in there. But I'm going to give the Falcons a B. I liked most of the stuff they did. Just letting a lot of guys go. This team is very bare on defense. Their offense should be okay from now on. So you got to go defense heavy in this draft. Maybe get a running back a little higher. Get a wide receiver later rounds because you have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, so you should be okay there. But overall, I liked what the Falcons did. So we're off to a good start. The Carolina Panthers. And this is where my takes are going to get a little different from the media. So I just want to start with the Cam Newton situation because I think they handled that in the most pitiful way possible. First of all, you basically force him into requesting a trade. You didn't give him any opportunity. You just made it public, and then you had ownership and front office people come out and say their goodbyes to Cam publicly while he was still on the team. Like, what are you doing? At least trade him first to say your goodbyes. Just have the Adam Schefter report that he's getting requested trade. It's just frustrating to me. I think that was just... And they kind of did the same thing with Greg Olsen. I mean, I think Greg Olsen getting cut was just it was a no-brainer, to be honest, but they just forced him into it. I don't know, man. But what they ended up adding was Teddy Bridgewater, who is a good quarterback. I like Teddy. I've liked him for a while, but I don't know what the Panthers are trying to do. So are they tanking? Are they rebuilding? It seems like they're trying to rebuild, but they're still trying to win. But I don't think this roster is good enough to win a lot. So if you're trying to tank for Trevor, because this Bridgewater deal is structured in a way where you can get out of it after like 1 year, and then you take on a little bit of dead money for the second year. So you can get out of it easy, but Bridgewater is a good enough quarterback to win you some games. I don't think this roster is good enough to try and win anything. I don't know. I think the value for Teddy was good, but I just don't agree with the direction that the Panthers are in. I think they're the worst in the NFC South right now, and I think it's pretty clear. Then they ended up trading for Russell Okung, and they traded Trey Turner for him. Again, you're trading a multiple-time Pro Bowl guard for Russell Okung, who's a really old left tackle. He's good, but Trey Turner was younger. I get that you're trying to make the blind side blocker more important, and I get the trade, but I just don't agree with it with the rebuild. You also signed Robbie Anderson, which I think they got good value for. I think his deal was pretty good. You know, it's like a 1-year deal essentially with a second year for $9 million, which is pretty solid considering the cap's jumping next year. I really like the Stephen Weatherly signing. I think he has a lot of potential to do well across from Brian Burns. You know, I think it was like it might have been a 2-year deal, but it was for like $6 million. If he gives you 7-8 sacks, totally worth it. I love that move. And I kind of shocked the Vikings let him go. They also signed PJ Walker to be the backup quarterback for Teddy Bridgewater. Makes sense to me. He played at Temple for Matt Rule. So they also signed Tahir Whitehead. I mean, he's not very good. He was terrible with the Raiders last year. I mean, to make up for Luke Kuechly retiring, go get Isaiah Simmons, man. He is a stud. Replace him with that. And they also picked up a 5th round pick for Kyle Allen. So they signed PJ Walker. They trade Kyle Allen. Makes sense to me. Getting a 5th for Kyle Allen, which is, I think that's a good trade. Now, like I said, Luke Kuechly retired, and they can't control that. That just sucks, man. Luke Kuechly was a generational talent, and it sucks to see him go with how young, quote unquote, but he was 29, I think. Then they also let James Bradbury go, and James Bradbury is a very good corner. He got paid pretty fair money for market value. So letting him go, their cornerback group is just, it's not very pretty. It's not. If they can somehow land Jeff Okudah, I'd love that for them. And they also cut Eric Reed. And why? Why? To make room for, I guess to make room for Anderson. But like, Eric Reed was playing very well for them. This roster is just, it's not very good. They also lost all their defensive line to Buffalo, essentially. I just didn't like what the Panthers did. Like, I get what they're doing. I just don't agree with it. And I think the value of some of these things that they gave up for these people isn't that great. I'm thinking around a C+ for the Panthers. I'm probably gonna get, this is probably gonna be the take that I get the most slack for. I just didn't like most of what they did, but I'm not gonna negatively grade them because getting Bridgewater for that price tag, it's just a matter of me somewhat disagreeing with it. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. The Saints. Let's talk about a good offseason. They brought back Drew Brees. No brainer. He didn't retire, which is awesome. They also managed to finesse the cap and sign Emmanuel Sanders, which they needed a wide receiver for complement to Michael Thomas badly. And Sanders fit nicely into the offense. He's a very smart player. Drew Brees is going to love him. I don't doubt that. Somehow managed to bring back Malcolm Jenkins. How? They signed him to replace Von Bell. And okay, Malcolm Jenkins is better, so I get it. They lost Teddy, bound to happen. Yeah, they couldn't pay him that for be a backup. They lost Eli Apple, which is whatever. He's fine. Actually, his deal just fell through with the Raiders, so honestly, they could probably get him back again. And then they first round tendered Taysom Hill, which is kind of funny. But overall, the Saints had a very good offseason. Somehow made the cap work to bring in these guys, and they have the most complete roster in the NFL right now. And hopefully they can finally put together a good playoff run to show that. So they're getting an A. I don't think that's a wild take at all. And I think most of you would agree with me on that. Now let's talk about Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers, man. You signed Tom Brady. You're gone from Jameis. Congratulations. You're free. You have a competent quarterback for once. Tom Brady is going to completely get rid of those mistakes that Jameis had. And now you can question the fit in a Bruce Arians offense, but they will make it work some way. He didn't sign there just because of the money. He signed there because he thought that it was the best situation for him. That's really all I have to say on it. I mean, Tom Brady, just in the draft, you have to protect him more. Your offensive line isn't that great for him right now. So hopefully you trade up into the top 10 so you can get one of those top tackles. I think they're going to focus a bit on the offense in this draft because their defense was sneaky good at the end of last year. Now, I know their secondary was terrible at the start of the year, but overall, their defense it's ascending, and I think they have real potential for next season. So that's why you see them bringing back players like Shaq Barrett on the franchise tag, which totally makes sense for the same reason as Bud Dupree. They managed to re-sign Jason Pierre-Paul, and they brought back Ndamukong Suh. And both those guys were huge parts of that defense and its success last year. So totally get it. The guys they lost, not really anything notable. Just this Bucs team is better. Tom Brady really makes them better. The Bucs lost out on a lot of really close games last year because of mistakes by Jameis Winston, and Tom Brady will surely fix those in some way. I don't think right now they are the favorites in the NFC South. I think that's the Saints, but I think this is definitely a playoff team on paper. Hopefully their draft is good and they live up to the hype. And also those new unis are cool as hell. They are fresh. You got rid of those alarm clock numbers, those ugly jerseys, finally, and they went back to a classic look and they look nice. So Buccaneers are getting an A. My only tad bit of a knock, you didn't really add any outside players other than Brady. And that's like nitpicking like crazy, but so yeah, I really like this Bucs team. I think they have really nice potential. You've probably heard enough about the Texans and Bill O'Brien. Do I really need to explain? Can I just skip over them? Like, please? You let Hopkins walk, you let DJ Reader walk. You had so much money to spend, and you use that money to take on David Johnson, an old injury-prone running back. Take on his contract. You sign Randall Cobb for a 3-year, $27 million deal. He is like 31 years old. Okay, whatever, I guess. That's an overpay like crazy. Timmy Jernigan, I actually like that contract. I like that value. So I'll give him that. But signing Eric Murray to whatever deal they sent him for, it was a lot more money than he should have gotten, which I remember. And they retained Bradley Roby. They overpaid him. He's fine. And they brought back Darren Fells, who is okay. I mean, cheap contract, whatever. But when you make that trade, I'm giving you an F for what the f*** are you doing? So I just saw the Brandon Cooks trade that just went through with the Texans. And let me just say this. Why? Now, I get it. Brandon Cooks is a good player. But the thing is, he's had 5 known concussions. He's on a very bad contract. You essentially paid Randall Cobb 3 years, 27 to be your wide receiver 4. So is Kenny Stills going to be on the trade market now because he's paid Randall Cobb? Are you going to run 4 wide receiver sets like crazy? Or what are you doing? Giving up a second-round pick in this loaded wide receiver class to get at, honestly, a lower cap hit. You could be paying what you're giving Brandon Cooks and Randall Cobb to DeAndre Hopkins, and you'd be in a much better spot at your receiver position because you could just use that second-round pick you got on a wide receiver if you wanted to. That wide receiver would have a lower cap charge, and he'd be young. Fire Bill O'Brien, man. On to the Colts. The Colts had a sneaky good offseason. Now, I know. I predicted Jameis to them. Now, if you do watch the video, I did say I wouldn't be surprised if Phillip Rivers went there. And he did. And I like it. It's a 1-year, $25 million deal. Makes sense to me. He's going to be behind a fantastic offensive line, which he never was throughout his career in LA. Or San Diego, I guess you could say. This is Phillip Rivers' best situation to do really well in. Hopefully the Colts can somewhat flourish. And they're trying to flourish by trading the 13th overall pick for DeForest Buckner, which I love that trade. They had a lot of money to spend, so they spent it on one of the best interior defensive linemen in the entire NFL, and they needed interior defensive line bad. Getting Buckner for the 13th overall pick, I would have done the same trade. I think it's a great pickup. They paid him like crazy. He deserves the money, and I think the Colts are the favorites in the AFC South. I mean, you signed Xavier Rhodes, whatever. He's bad now, but maybe you can kind of revive him. Eric Ebron walk. Don't care. He's not better than Jack Doyle. I mean, he was great with Andrew Luck, but you don't have Andrew Luck anymore. They let Devin Funchess walk. Makes sense. They also cut Pierre Desir, which that I kind of don't agree with. I guess they want to upgrade a corner, but they signed Rhodes. And they also brought back Anthony Costanzo. Love that contract. Costanzo is an anchor for them. So Colts are getting an A. I liked what they've done. Just the Desir cut and the Rhodes signing was a little weird for me. I would have just kept Desir and not signed Rhodes. But, I mean, I've just liked what they've done. I think they are the heavy favorites in the AFC South. barring the Titans signing someone like Jadeveon Clowney or something like that. A game-changing move. But the Colts and the Titans are for sure the top of that division right now. Speaking of that division, we're going to go to the bottom of it. The Jacksonville Jaguars. They're going to be, at this rate, the worst team in the NFL next year. And I'm not changing my mind on that. They signed Joe Schobert, which is all right. I mean, he was a solid linebacker. And they paid him a little over what I would have paid him, but I think he fits well. Tyler Eifert, for what they got him for, is all right. They need something on offense because their offense is, whew. And they ended up getting 2 4th-round picks, a 5th-round pick for Calais Campbell, AJ Bouye, and Nick Foles. Good on them for getting out under those contracts because they needed to bad because their cap situation was terrible. And fantastic job on getting out of Nick Foles. I think you could have gotten a little better value for Campbell, but if you really wanted to get rid of that money that bad, which you honestly should, I don't blame him for doing the trades. And they also franchise tagged Yannick Ngakoue. Totally makes sense. They're probably going to trade him soon, and it's looking like they're going to get something like a high 2nd or a 1st-round pick for him. And if they can manage to do that, huge win for them. But he's still on the roster. He's not happy. He wants out. That's just not good. Good for them. So the Jaguars have had I personally don't like it, but I get what they're doing. So I'm not going to give them like an F because they're going to be the worst team in the NFL next year. I think that's pretty fair to say. Everything that they've done has made sense, but it's also been at a different, how do I say this? What they've done has made sense, but they could have gotten more or better value for what they did. I'm going to applaud them for getting rid of Nick Foles. I'm going to just give them a C-. The Jaguars, they're not going to be good next year. And I think they know that. That's why they're getting rid of everyone. But their defense and their offense is looking like a barren wasteland, should I say. And no wonder when they want to go to London or something like that. The Tennessee Titans. So you franchise tag Derrick Henry, which I understand entirely, though I don't like paying running backs. But Derrick Henry is a different animal, so I get it. They kind of overpaid for Ryan Tannehill, so I'll let that be, but they had to pay him, so I will accept it. Their team got much better when Ryan Tannehill took over as quarterback, and they paid him like he's their starting quarterback, so I get it. And I thought it was going to happen. I knew it was going to be for around that price tag, and it did. They lost Jack Conklin, which came at the cost of, them tagging Henry and signing Tannehill. And Dennis Kelly, they extended. So, I mean, he's kind of a bridge quote unquote. He's going to be all right for them. Conklin is definitely better, but Kelly should hold his own there. The Jurrell Casey trade is what really throws me off. I thought that trade was just bad. I get it was to get rid of money, but your defensive line isn't nearly as good now, and I don't know, man. I put an asterisk next to Logan Ryan because he still hasn't signed elsewhere, and apparently he's still in contact with the Titans. If he re-signs with them, you could just imagine my grade going up just a bit. Not by much though, but he's their best corner. Their cornerback group still isn't that great. Vic Beasley, I'm not big on Vic Beasley. I think they kind of paid him a little too much. They got a guy across from Harold Landry. Makes sense because Cam Wake got hurt like crazy last year. So that's about it for the Titans. It was extremely underwhelming. I expected their offseason to be around a C because I knew most of their money was going to be spent on Tannehill and Henry. So I expected it to be just pretty But the Casey trade and then kind of overpaying for Beasley, in my opinion, I'm going to give him a C-, just a little bit lower. Because I guess I get where you could see the benefit in upgrading their grade from a C because they managed to extend Tannehill, Henry, and then they got Kelly back to bridge. But I don't think those moves are that noteworthy. Noteworthy is a bad term, but the moves were expected. That's what I'm saying. So I expected them to have around a C, and because they were no-brainers. It's just kind of underwhelming. And apparently they're in on Clowney. If they manage to get Jadeveon Clowney, then this grade's going to go up a bit, probably to like a B-, B. But for right now, They're at a C- for me. Thank you for watching this part of a 4-part series where I'm going to be grading every NFL team's offseason moves thus far. If you haven't already, please like the video down below and subscribe to All Sports Culture on YouTube. We have a lot of things coming in store, including the next mock draft, which is going to include trades, so hopefully you guys stick around to see that. Check out the other parts of this series if you haven't already. Make sure you also follow All Sports Culture on Instagram and all of our other socials at All Sport Culture. My name's been Sam from All Sports Culture, and I'll see you all in the next one.